Hey, welcome to Calgary Basement Sessions. I'm Ben Price.
And I'm Ben Montgomery.
And today we are interviewing Cam Buie. Cam Buie is a keyboardist, composer, songwriter, and session musician from Calgary, Alberta, who draws a multitude of diverse musical interests. After completing a degree in classical piano performance from the University of Ottawa, Cam toured across the country playing keyboards with piano rock trio Casse. Did I say that right?
It's actually Case.
Case. The umlauts.
Yeah.
As a
The
primary
umlaut, it's a German word, but we kind of anglicize it. So.
Gotcha. He toured with them. Upon relocating back to Calgary, Cam quickly immersed himself into the Calgary music community, playing jazz, Latin rock, country, and funk while producing electronic music and trip hop of his own. What is trip hop? We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about trip hop.
We'll talk about trip hop. Cam works with such Calgary artists as Sweetberry Wine, Kate Stevens, Mariah Stokes, Devin Cooper, Mike McKenzie, Therese, Emile.
Amelie.
Oh, I was saying it right the first time. Amelie Peterson, Marcus Trummer. He's also worked as a producer for Sid Hall and Rome 9. I'm going to say 9.
Yep.
And has a long-standing collaboration with Jay Grooves and Carson Gant of One Up Drum Vids. Welcome, Cam.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Ben and Ben. Ben squared.
Ben squared.
Oh, there's some promo for you.
Yeah, 100%. Ben squared, yeah. So you've had a good day so far being quarantined?
I've had a pretty good day so far being quarantined. I'm in a unique position or a lucky position of being quarantined in my home studio. So I mean, there are worse places to be quarantined.
Yeah,
so
I bet there is.
yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, full of all your keyboards and stuff and all that sort of nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah, I got my all my nonsense. I'm kind of crammed in the corner of a basement here, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 synthesizers, 7 synthesizers, drum pad, a modular synth, a drone synth, and my whole Logic rig and a mixer.
Wow.
So,
I saw on Instagram.
I literally just spin around in my my chair and can kind of reach everything from one location.
I saw on Instagram you got a new keyboard. That was it the black keyboard that you got?
Yeah, it's actually really cool. For the people who are listening who know it's a Cboard made by the Rowley company, and so it's basically like a piano, but instead of keys, it's like a spongy material with ridges. So the keys are the actual ridges, and you kind of can press into the ridges to get louder, softer, which is great because as a piano player, you play a note and it totally just decays instantly. Like I had a teacher who always told me the instrument you play is in a constant state of dying, always when you're playing it, because every time you play a note, it's instantly starting to die away, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
So that's a big problem for piano players. But this Cboard really is great because I can play a note and then I can press harder into the key and increase volume, kind of like a saxophone player or a string player. So it's like super expressive, and like I'm really like falling in love with it.
Wow, that's fantastic.
That's awesome. So it's safe to say you've been playing around with that quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
It actually arrived on my doorstep. I had ordered it before I knew all the end of the world was going to happen.
Right.
And it arrived on my doorstep probably about 2 days into it. And then I was like, well, I guess, it gives me a lot of time to kind of master a whole new technique of playing keyboards. So
100%, yeah. Well, I saw that video that you posted on YouTube quite recently of you'd covered a song and stuff, and you did the bass solo part on that keyboard, and you were like playing the keys. That was awesome.
Yeah, I challenged myself to learn a Jaco Pastorius bass line from Weather Report, because Weather Report is like one of my absolute favorite groups of all time. And it gave me a good opportunity to really kind of get the technical aspects of the new Cboard under my fingers. And then as an added thing, I was like, well, I have to be able to play the chords in my right hand at the same time. So, and then I very quickly almost threw many a thing out the window in frustration. So, but I got it done. So
not the Cboard, I hope.
I'm better because of it. No,
okay.
It was one of the old ones.
Gotcha. Yeah, just whatever. I need to throw something.
There's something, yeah. That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. So, you work with a lot of artists, man. Like that's quite a list for sure. quite a list.
Yeah, I do. I like to keep it as diverse as possible because I find it kind of difficult to pin myself down in terms of the music that I really want to make. I've made, a lot of different genres of my own music, and I'm kind of trying to hone it down to stuff that I would make anyway, and then that's sort of maybe the stuff that I want to focus on. But in terms of playing with other artists, I like to keep it really, fresh all the time. And I feel like that's kind of what you got to do in order to kind of survive in the business,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whatever is left of the business, you kind of got to be able to do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of really what I enjoy the most about music is being able to play a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So like you went on tour as soon as you came out of university. You went on tour with a band, and you finished touring with that band, and then you moved back to Calgary, back to your home city. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of a funny story. I mean, I know that the name is very deceiving. Like we probably could have picked a better name because we said case, but it's actually spelled like Käse, which is like German. It's a German word for cheese. And originally it didn't start out that way. I was reading this book. Oh, what's it called again? It's a cyberpunk book. I was reading it, and the lead character's name is Case, C-A-S-E, and I thought, wow, that's a really strange name for a person, but it's a science fiction book, so I guess that makes sense. And when I was starting a band, I was really wanting to have a name that was like one word, because I always loved those bands like Rush or like Sweet, the names that are like really kind of in your face and just one word, not the somethings. Mm-hmm. And so then I thought, Case is great, but to be edgy, we'll put a K on it, just, because that's a lot cooler, right? And then we had our German bass player join. Our bass player was German, and he said, "Oh, Kase, that's like cheese in German." And I was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Well, now obviously we have to put the umlaut because we'd be doing a disservice to the community by not." So, but we kept the pronunciation the same. But those guys, that was the best. We did we all met in music school at the University of Ottawa, and we played a lot of shows, wrote a lot of songs, and we did an entirely DIY tour across Canada. So we cold called venues, and we lived in a van. We took all of our camping gear. We saved money by like camping on the side of the road, and I have some crazy stories about that type of stuff. But basically we drove all the way from Toronto to Vancouver in like 3 days. Oh, wow. And then we played on the way back. So we did Vancouver, Calgary, Regina, Winnipeg, Sudbury, Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa, and Montreal. Wow. So it was a long haul.
That is proper DIY, man. Wow. Mm-hmm. That is crazy. So
then basically so we lived out of the back of the Tahoe, our Chevy Tahoe, and we had in this Tahoe we had 3 guys, and we had all of our music gears. We had a full drum kit, my keyboard amp, the keyboard, the bass amp, all of our camping gear, and all of our luggage. So we had like a stove because we cooked stuff too, and we camped out like in Walmart parking lots and all this stuff. And that was some of the craziest. It was one of those things, like a lot of people have those times in their life when they're like, man, that was so good.
Yeah.
But I would never put up with that kind of a thing again.
Yeah.
That's that. How many people in the band?
There was a 3-piece.
Okay.
So it was like I really love like piano rock. So I just wanted to be Ben Folds because Ben Folds was the reason that like I started a band. So we did really distorted lead bass, what we called it, nice. Acoustic piano or keyboards, and drums. And we sang 3-part harmony too. So it was like a full-on Ben Folds outfit.
That's awesome.
That is fantastic. Because I remember I did a DIY tour around the UK, and I've stayed in a few supermart parking lots, in a cold van in November, so I get where you're coming from for sure, where you just don't sleep the whole night because you're just like propped up against a cold window.
Shaking
music live.
But the funny thing about Canada too, or the Canada as well, is like if you drive around the UK, like you can usually get to the next town like in not too much time.
Oh, yeah.
But like there's a stretch from Sudbury to Winnipeg where you drive for 20 hours and there's no towns. Like you drive 20 hours and like there's nothing pretty much.
Yeah.
Like some small like gas stations or campgrounds, but there's no major city for like 20 hours. So that's everybody who tours Canada talks about, like the hump over Ontario, because you can kind of do Western Canada and you can do like Montreal, Toronto, and you can do the East Coast, but to get over the hump of Ontario is like, that's the worst part.
Wow, no, that's nuts. No, you're right. You're right about the UK though, because we travel from Glasgow to London. It's like 9 hours. And that's the whole of the UK basically. 9 hours.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, we
and you can play how many shows in between?
Yeah, like thousands, all with different accents as well.
Thousands of shows.
Thousands of shows. Aye, no, it's crazy. So you toured a lot. You toured around Canada, and then you came to Calgary, and you settled down here for a while. And you're a session guy. How did you? What was your steps into getting into like session work? Like your sort of like your number 1 to like number 10 steps, and like
to like steps on like Calgary or Cam's quick tips on how to be a session musician, basically.
The Cam's notes.
Yeah, the Cam's notes.
Yeah, the Cam's notes. It's always a tricky kind of thing. I'd say I always wanted to be a session musician, and I'm trying to just like remember, I heard something somewhere where it was about composing as well. Someone said, you know, if you all you have to do is really tell yourself, like you're a composer or you're a session musician, and that's what you're working towards. And if you believe it, then you can kind of make it happen. And I know that always sounds like super cheesy, but really there's no other way to say it. Like if you believe that you're meant to be that kind of a thing, you will find a way to kind of make it work. The biggest thing that you have to work towards in being a session musician is the adaptability, kind of like what I was talking about before, where you have to really be able to switch genres, you know, quick, because you have to be on the ball or on the spot all the time. And you have to kind of perform really well under pressure. So a lot of the playing that I've done over the years has really prepped me for kind of high pressure situations. Not saying all sessions are high pressure situations, but it definitely helps, you know, being able to function under pressure, you know, in front of an instrument. And because I mean, that's kind of really what my degree prepped me for, was like doing, you know, they'd be like, here's this like Beethoven sonata, and like you have to perform it in front of the class next week. So it's like you have like a week to learn it, and it's like crunch time. And or here you're in sight reading class and they give you something and you're like, here you have to sight read it right now in front of the class, and you're like, ugh. So, and it's like that like every day. So they really just pump into you like performing under pressure. So that really is kind of the main thing, being super adaptable, performing well under pressure, and probably there's a good element of creativity involved as well. Maybe not in the early stages, because a lot of the times you get hired and they just want you to do what they want you to do, and then like you get out. But then a lot of the time you'll get hired for a session where it's a bit of a writing session mixed in with it. So they're like, we kind of have the song half figured out, do the keyboard part, and then maybe we're going to try and see what happens in the studio and try and finish it. So I've been involved in some of those kind of sessions as well, and those are kind of the ones that are kind of rolling a bit more until I was self-isolated.
So what was the most high pressure session you've ever done, would you say? No pressure.
Yeah. I don't know how, like I find that the sessions that I've done have been not as high pressure as some of the situations I was in my classical music degree. Some of those situations were a lot more stressful, but I'd say like in terms of a session, whenever I get to go to like OCL studios in Calgary, where they do, you know, where like Brett Kissel records, he has like the #1 country album in Canada and the States. Whenever I go out there to record, it can be high pressure. It was high pressure a couple months ago, because I started getting calls where I didn't know any of the musicians. Like the studio called me and said, "We need you to come in and record for this track." And then I didn't know like what it was, and I didn't know any of the people involved. So I just had to show up and kind of do my thing. And that's probably the most stressful stuff, is if you just show up and you don't know really, what to expect, essentially.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, because I've heard of OCL Studios. I've never been. I'd love to go. It looks fantastic.
It's unbelievable. Like the first time I went there, it was like I said to my friend, I was like, "This is like Neverland for musicians. It's crazy." Like, so it's owned by this great guy in the Calgary music community. His name's Dan Owen, and he built this studio in his. It's basically his house and a recording studio. So he lives in the upper floor, and then the lower floor is like the studio and the live rooms and stuff.
That's crazy.
And they've got like a pool, and they do like backyard parties, and like it's like a full-on experience. And usually, because it's in Chestermere, so because the artists usually come, or they have to travel, to get there, the artists that record there usually stay in the house and record there as well. So they usually stay there for a week and record their albums and stuff like that. So
wow, and
it's pretty sweet.
It's just outside Calgary, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's in Chestermere.
Right, okay.
It's probably like 40 minutes.
Wow.
Like 40-minute drive from me. Like from the south side of Calgary, you can get there maybe like 20 or so.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable. That's crazy.
So that was that was a great, chance meeting of getting in with kind of some of the people involved over there. And that's actually with Sweetberry Wine, kind of the main group that I play in.
Yeah.
Those other musicians, they've been more established in the Calgary scene for a little bit longer. And then when I got in with them and started playing with them, that's when the doors kind of opened up to OCL and some of the other studio work.
Yeah. Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And aside from studio or session work, you also work for the National Music Center. That's got to be a pretty cool job.
I do. It is a pretty cool job. Like I say on a lot of my tours, it's pretty amazing to be someone who studies music and then gets a job in music. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty thankful. I'm pretty thankful for that.
Yeah.
But So for the people who don't know, it's the National Music Center. It's officially called Studio Bell, home of the National Music Center.
Right.
But inside, it's a bunch of collections of instruments and memorabilia, artifacts from Canadian music, Canadian culture, and a big part of my job there is to demonstrate the studios. So I do recording studio tours. We have Tonto, a massive modular synthesizer that Stevie Wonder used on like 4 of his albums. So I get to demo that for the public. And this is going to be like a lot of really synth nerd stuff. But like we have Oberheim 4-voice, which is like a crazy synthesizer, ARP quadras, EMU modulars, ARP modulars. There's a lot of really cool stuff. They also have Elton John's songwriting piano, so the piano that Elton John wrote the first 5 of his first 5 albums on.
Wow,
that's awesome.
And a harpsichord from 1591, so like a 400-year-old harpsichord, forte pianos, period instruments. There's a lot of stuff there. So I do tours of the studios and the museum. I also do school kid education, so teaching all the 3rd graders about vibration and hearing and sound and all that fun stuff.
Right.
Wow.
And there's a lot of stuff. And the UK connection being we have the Rolling Stones mobile recording studio. So the Rolling Stones truck is there.
I saw that. Yes, that's right beside King Eddie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Are these all permanent things that the museum owns now, or are they something that would tour to other places?
Most of it is all permanently owned by the museum because the museum is only like the building itself is only like 3 years old.
Yeah.
But the organization that's been collecting the artifacts has been collecting since the early 80s as the Cantos Music Foundation.
Wow.
Originally, it was a collection of keyboard instruments. Then that branched into synthesizers and keyboard instruments. And that's why they're kind of heavy on the keyboards, is because originally the roots of the foundation was a keyboard collection.
Okay.
And so a lot of the stuff we've had for quite a long time. Like, for instance, the Rolling Stones mobile, the truck, has been with since about 2000.
Okay.
And it was kind of in storage and being refurbished, and then was put on display and installed when the new building opened.
That's awesome. I have a friend, I think, because they still record out of that, don't they? Not the Rolling Stones, I guess. I should say
do.
some artists still record out of it.
Yeah.
Because a friend of mine, I think a friend of mine recorded some songs in there. Kyle Gruninger.
Okay. Is he part of a group, part of a band, or did he do as a solo act?
He's a solo now. He played for, or he was the lead, the frontman for a band called Incura, out of Vancouver. And now I think he's just under his own name, Kyle Gruninger.
Okay, cool. Do you remember if he did like if he recorded a live session? Like, was it a live performance recorded to the truck, or was it out finishing up an album?
I don't actually know. I think it was something in conjunction with the Junos. He did like a master class with a bunch of people who won or were like selected to do something with the Junos. So he did voice work with them, and I think it was part of that project.
Wow.
Okay, cool. Because I know that when the Junos were in town in Calgary, the National Music Center partnered with a lot of people. There was a lot of workshops.
Yeah. Okay.
All that cool stuff. Mm-hmm.
Incredible. Is the Geddy Lee Bass collection still there?
It actually just ended.
Oh.
So just as people were kind of going into their hidey holes and quarantining themselves, the exhibit was taken down. But it was extended, so it was there for about a year or so. Yeah, and so Geddy Lee of Rush fame, he gave us or loaned us 26 basses from his personal collection, and some of them are absolutely insane. Like, some of them were prototype models of basses that were never officially like ever made or manufactured.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how he got his hands on some of this stuff. And the story behind it is he had 7 basses in display at the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Basically he was given a chance to show some of his basses, and they told him that they could only show 7. And he was like, 7? What do you mean? I have a collection of like 244. So then he said, how am I supposed to pick 7 of my favorite? So then he came to us, and then we were like, okay, 26 is... we can do 26, basically. Yeah.
It's better than 7.
Yeah, it's better than 7.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I went to see that a few months ago, and it was unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. My girlfriend's dad has like the book, like the Geddy Lee book and stuff like that. That was on sale.
Yeah.
Silly the amount of basses that man has.
And it was really funny because, I mean, like, the basses are so nice, and I was saying to like some of my coworkers, like, there are a couple things in this museum that I would steal if I could get the chance. And that first year they ever made Rickenbackers, Rickenbacker from 1960, is definitely kind of one of the ones that I would, think about the 5-finger discount, right?
5-finger discount, exactly.
That's hilarious.
That's incredible.
So you might have explained this already, but I just didn't pick up on it. But one of your things that you sent us in your little information package is that you are an instrument interpreter. What does that mean?
Yes. It's a fancy way of saying that I play the instruments and then talk about them and contextualize them. Because the big thing is, like, in a lot of museums where they have artifacts, you can go in and you can look at them and you can appreciate them for what they are. Whereas with musical artifacts, a lot of the time, like instruments, a lot of the time you come up to it and you look at it and you say, oh, cool, that's cool. I'm nice, sweet. Yeah. And there's not much to it. It's not until someone will play it for you. Right. That's the main thing. Someone plays it for you and you really associate that sound with a record you love, or, something you heard on the radio. And it's really, these instruments are kind of inanimate objects until you start to play them, and then really they come to life. And so that's kind of what a big part of my job is like, I'm trained to play a lot of different instruments, wide and across a wide range of genres. So I can play the Renaissance music and the classical music on the period instruments, and then I can go to the synthesizers and I can play like a hit from Michael Jackson's Off the Wall, like on a mini Moog. And people need to hear these instruments in order to have a connection with them. And that's basically what instrument interpreter means.
Especially through a song that they would recognize that certain riff or something off of would really help.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
exactly.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned you're stuck in your studio during this time. Are you writing any music at all?
I am writing a little bit of music. I've written a lot actually. I have a lot of I'm getting a lot of ideas. I'm being really creative, which is nice. That's the one thing that this being trapped in here is good for, is my natural habitat is kind of creating. And but I find that I'm now drowning in ideas. I have like so many different things, and I'm really trying to narrow it down to like a central like kind of sound or a central idea, which is kind of difficult. I have a lot of urges to wake up and then I'll make a guitar based track and then put like a beat to it, and then I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And then the next day I'll get up and I want to make like a piano kind of lo-fi beat, and then I'm like, wow, this is really cool too. So I'm making a lot of different stuff and I'm trying to find a way to mash it all together. I have a couple kind of not completed tracks but completed ideas that I've been kind of happy with. And then, but now looking back at them, I'm wondering if it's too much of a hodgepodge. Because but I think like I don't know. It's like being creative. It's a funny line of walking between, is this something I don't like, or is it something that I do like, and is it me? And I'm just kind of getting in my head like that other people won't like it. So I'm really trying to, get over that hill of, this is just what I want to create, and I should create it because it's what I want to create, essentially.
So I'm guessing you're just working on this on your own. You're not like bringing anyone else in. It's just you.
It's just me for right now. When I get the tracks more fleshed out and kind of written, maybe I'll invite some other people in. But I really just have to kind of focus it a lot more. And I've been building it in my mind, this EP, kind of like for the past few months, but I haven't had like the full on time to really focus on it. So like now it's really, I have the time.
Yeah.
So I'm really So it's not all bad. But I think that like I do definitely have some people that know how to play the guitar better than me, and I definitely know people that know how to play the drums better than me. So I'm gonna kind of finish these demos a bit, and then maybe bring in some people after that.
Fantastic, man.
Is it instrumental music? Is there lyrics? Is there like a theme you're looking for, or?
Well, right now it's all completely instrumental ideas. I want to add lyrics.
Okay.
And I do have lyrics written, and but the hardest part always for me as a songwriter has been combining the two. I can write lyrics pretty easily, and I can write the music pretty easily, but then I have all these ideas that seem disjointed. So I have to match, the words songs, which doesn't always kind of fit in my mind the way I want it to fit. And so yeah, it's just really that kind of synthesis of fitting the feelings of the words with the feelings of the music that I'm writing.
Well, that's fantastic, man. Yeah, like I think you're a great guy. We've done some work together, like with some rehearsals and stuff like that. You're a fantastic musician. You're a lovely bloke, and yeah, we for sure wish you all the best, and hopefully this thing wraps up pretty soon, this coronavirus, so we can everyone can get back to work for sure. It's
I want to come take the tour now.
Yes, 100%. We want to come take the tour.
Yeah,
definitely. We want to see you play that.
Well, I'll hit you guys up for a private experience when all this opens back up.
That will be. We will look forward to that. Yeah.
Definitely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and so you're on Instagram as well, so that'll pop up somewhere on the screen. You're on YouTube, and you're on Facebook. And
yep.
Yeah, so anyone who wants to go follow.
So yeah, you can check out. I have a SoundCloud link in my Instagram that I post most of my stuff to. So if you're ever curious as to the stuff I'm making, I usually upload it to SoundCloud.
Awesome, fantastic,
perfect.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out your busy writing day to speak to us. We really appreciate it for sure.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you. Talk soon.
Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.